Good morning everyone, we are the Group 2 and we were going to discuss about the operation strategy. The learning contents of this discussion, Topic 1, what is strategy and what is operation strategy? The Topic 2, difference between a market requirement and an operation resource view of operation strategy. The Topic 3, how can an operation strategy from the basis for operation improvement? And the last topic we discussed is how can an operation strategy be put together and the process of operation strategy. What is strategy? Strategy is linguistically the word strategy derived from the Greek word strategos, meaning leading an army. And although there is no direct historical link between Greek military practice and modern ideas of strategy, the military metaphor is powerful. Both military and business strategy can be described in similar ways and include some of the following. First, setting broad objectives that direct an enterprise towards its overall goal. The second, planning the path in general rather than specific terms that will achieve these goals. The third is stressing long-term rather than short-term objectives. The fourth, dealing with the total picture rather than stressing individual activities. Operation strategy is the concern that pattern of strategic decisions and action that set the role, objectives, and activities of the operation. Strategy is usually regarded as the opposite of those day-to-day routine activities. But operations are not the same as operational. The word operation are the resources that create product and services, while the operational is the opposite of strategic, meaning day-to-day and detailed. So one can examine both the operational and the strategic aspects of operation. Operation strategy, it is also conventional to distinguish between the content and the process of operation strategy. The content of operation strategy is the specific decision and action that set the operation role, objectives, and activities. The process of operation strategy is the method that is used to make the specific content decision. From implementing to supporting to driving strategy. Most businesses expect their operation strategy to improve operation performance over time. In doing this, they should be progressing from a state contributing very little to the competitive success of the business through to the point where they are directly responsible for its competitive success. They should be able to in turn master the skills first to implement, then support, and then drive operation strategy. First, implementing business strategy. The most basic role of operation is to implement strategy. You cannot, after all, touch a strategy. You cannot even see it. All you can see is how the operation behaves in practice. Second, supporting business strategy. Support strategy goes beyond simply implementing strategy. It means developing the capabilities which allow the organization to improve and refine its strategic goals. The third, driving business strategy. The third and the most difficult role of operation is to drive strategy by giving it a unique and long-term advantage. Hayes and Wheelwright's fourth stage of operation contribution. Professor Hayes and Wheelwright of Harvard University developed a four-stage model which can be used to evaluate the role and contribution of the operations function. The model traces the progression of the operation function from what is the largely negative role of stage 1 operation to its becoming the central element of competitive strategy in excellent Stage 4 operation. Stage 1 Internal Neutrality. The very poorest level of contribution by the operation function. It is holding the company back from competing effectively. It is inward-looking and at the best reactive with very little positive to contribute towards competitive success. Paradoxically, its goal is to be ignored or internally neutral. At least then, it is not holding the company back in any way. It attempts to improve by avoiding making mistakes. Stage 2 External Neutrality. The first step of breaking out of Stage 1 is for the operation function to begin comparing itself with similar companies or organizations in the outside market, being externally neutral. This may not immediately take it to the first division of companies in the market, but at least it is measuring itself against its competitors' performance and trying to implement best practice. Stage 3 Internally Supportive. Stage 3 operations are among the best in their market. Yet, Stage 3 operation is still aspired to be clearly and unambiguously the very best in the market. They achieve this by gaining a clear view of the company's competitive or strategic goals and supporting it by developing appropriate operation resources. The operation is trying to be internally supportive by providing a credible operation strategy. The last stage is externally supportive, yet highest and will right. Success a further stage. The stage 4, where the company views the operation function as providing the foundation for its competitive success. Operation looks to the long term. It forecasts likely changes in markets and supply, and it develops the operations-based capabilities which will be required to compete in future market conditions. The Stage 4 operations are innovative, creative, and proactive and are driving the company's strategy by being one step ahead of competitors. What highest and will right call being externally supportive. And perspective on operation strategy. Operation strategy is a top-down reflection of what the whole group or business wants to do. Operation strategy is a bottom-up activity where operation improvements cumulatively build strategy. Operation strategy involves translating market requirements into operation decision, sometimes called the outside-in perspective. Operations strategy involves exploiting the capabilities of operation resources in choosing market, sometimes called the inside-out perspective.
Topic 2. The difference between a market requirements and an operation strategy. Operations principle. Operations strategy should reflect the requirements of the business markets. Market requirements-based strategies. No operation that continually fails to serve its markets adequately is likely to survive in the long term. Without an understanding of what makes required, it is impossible to ensure that the operation is achieving the right priority between its performance objectives: quality, speed, dependability, flexibility, and cost. Order winning and qualifying objectives. A particularly useful way of determining the relative importance of competitive factors is to distinguish between order winning and qualifying factors. Order-winning factors are those things which directly and significantly contribute to winning businesses. They are regarded by customers as key reasons for purchasing the product or service. Raising performance in an order-winning factor will either result in more business or improve the chances of gaining more business. Qualifying factors may not be the major competitive determinants of success but are important in another way. They are those aspects of competitiveness where the operations performance has to be above a particular level just to be considered by the customer. Other winning factors shows a steady and significant increase in their contribution to competitiveness as the operation gets better at providing them. Qualifying factors are givens they are as expected by customers and can severely disadvantage the competitive position of the operation if it cannot raise its performance above the qualifying level. Less important objectives have little impact on customers no matter how well the operation performs in them. The product or service life cycle influence on performance objectives. One way of generalizing the behavior of both customers and competitors is to link it to the life cycle of the products or services that operation is producing. The exact form of product or service life cycles will vary, but generally they are shown as the sales volume passing through the stages, which is introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. The implication of this for operations management is that products and services will require different operations strategies in each stage of their life cycle. Number 1. Introduction stage. When a product or service is first introduced, it is likely to be offering something new in terms of its design or performance, with few competitors offering the same product or service. Number 2. Growth stage. As volume grows, competitors may enter the growing market. Keeping up with demand could prove to the main operations preoccupation. Number 3. Maturity stage. Demand starts to level off. Some early competitors may have left the market and this industry will probably be dominated by a few larger companies. So operations will be expected to get the cost down in order to maintain profits or to allow price cutting or both. Number 4. The last stage. Decline. After time, sales will decline with more competitors dropping out of the market. There might be a residual market, but unless a shortage of capacity develops, the market will continue to be dominated by price competitions. Operations objectives continue to be dominated by cost.
The operation resources perspective. The final perspective on operation strategy is based on a particularly influential theory of business strategy, the resource-based view or RBV of the firm. The RBV holds the firms with an above average strategic performance is likely to have gained their sustainable competitive advantage because of the core competences or capabilities of their resources. This means that the way an organization inherits or acquires or develops its operations resources will, over the long term, have a significant. This means that the way an organization inherits or acquires or develops its operations resources will, over the long term, have a significant impact on its strategic success. Furthermore, the impact of its operation resource capabilities will be at least as big, if not greater, than that which it gets from its market position. So understanding and developing the capabilities of operations resources, although over neglected, is particularly important perspective on strategy. Resource constraints and capabilities. No organization can merely choose which part of the market it wants to be in without considering its ability to produce services and product in the way that will satisfy the market. Intangible resources. Intangible can considered as building blocks of the operation. An operations resource perspective must start with an understanding of resource, capabilities and constraints within the operation. It must answer the simple question, what do we have and what can we do? The equivalent of this mechanism in its processes. An operation's intangible resources includes its relationship with suppliers, the reputation it has with its customers, its knowledge of its process technologies, and the way its staff can work together in new product and service development. These intangible resources may not always be obvious within the operation, but they are important and have the real value. Above average competitive performance is likely to be the result of core capabilities or competences inherent in a firm's resources than a competitive positioning in its industry, and resources can have a particularly influential impact on strategic success if they exhibit some or all of the following properties. Strategic resources and sustainable competitive advantage. The resource-based explanation of why some companies manage to gain sustainable competitive advantage is that they have accumulated better or more appropriate resources. They are scarce. Unequal access to resources, so not all competing firms have scarce resources such as an ideal location, experienced engineers, proprietary software, etc. can strengthen competitive advantage. So for example, if a firm did not have the good foresight or luck to acquire a strategic resource, such as a supplier contract with a specialist supplier, when it was inexpensive, it will have to try and acquire it after it has become expensive, because other firms are also now wanting it. They are not very mobile. Some resources are difficult to move out of a firm. For example, if a new process is developed in a company, Stockholm site, and it based on the knowledge and experience of the Stockholm, process will be difficult, although to sell another company based or even Sweden if the staff do not want to move. As a result of the advantages that devised from processes, resources are more likely to be retained. They are difficult to imitate or substitute for. These two factors help define how easily a resource-based advantage can be sustained over time. It is not enough only to have resources which are unique and immobile. If a competitor can copy these resources or else predictably replace them with alternative resources, then their value will quickly deteriorate. However, the less tangible are the resources and the more connected with the tacit knowledge embedded with the organization, they are the for competitors to understand to copy. The hardware of computer sets limit to what it can do. In a similar way, investing in advanced technology and building more or better facilities can raise the potential of any type of operation within the limits which are imposed by the hardware of a computer. The software governs how effective the computer actually in practice. The most powerful computer can only work to its full potential if its software is capable of exploiting its potential. The same principle applies with operations. The best and costliest facilities and technology will only be effective if the operation also has an appropriate infrastructure which governs the way it will work on a day-to-day basis. Structural and infrastructural decisions. A distinction is often drawn between the strategic decisions which determine an operations structure and those which determine in infrastructure. An operations structure decision are those which we have placed and primarily influencing design activities, while infrastructures decisions are those which influence the workforce organization and the planning and control and improvement activities. The distinction in operations strategy has been compared with that between hardware and software in structure, the hardware of operation. Typically structured decisions. Which product or service should be developed? What activities should be done internally and should be outsourced? How many suppliers should we have? How many sites should we have? What should be the capacity of each site? Where should sites be located? What types of process technology should be operates?
Topic 3. How can operation strategy from the basis for operation improvement? An operation strategy is not just about checking that a business resources and processes are consistent with its overall strategy. It can also provide the foundation for improvement. The line of fit between market requirements and operation capabilities. At the strategic level, the whole purpose of operations improvements is to make operation performance better at serving its markets. There should be a fit between what an operation is trying to achieve in its markets, market requirements, and what it is good at doing operation capabilities. In terms of the framework illustrated in figure 2.6, improvement means three things. First, achieving alignment. This means achieving that approximately balance between required market performance and actual operation performance. The diagonal line in figure 2.6 therefore represent a line of fit with market requirements and operation capabilities in balance. Second, achieving sustainable alignment. It is not enough to achieve some degree of alignment to a single point in time. Equally important is whether operation processes could adapt to the new market condition. Third, improving overall performance. If the requirements placed the organization by its market are relatively undemanding, then the corresponding level of operation capabilities will not need to be particularly high. A strategic view of operation improvement priorities. One can use the idea of comparing market and operation perspective to provide more direct guidance to operation managers. The needs and preferences of customers shape the importance of operation objectives within the operation. Strategically, the most revealing point of comparison is with competitors. The role of competitors is determining achieved performance in a not-for-profit context. Other similar operation can be substituted for competitors. Both importance of performance have to be brought together before any judgment can be made as to the relative priorities for improvement. Just because an operation is not very good at something when compared with competitors' performance, it does not necessarily mean that should be immediately improved. But both importance and performance need to view together to judge the prioritization of objectives. Judging importance to customers. One usually needs to use a slightly more discriminating scale. One way to do this is to take the three broad categories of competitive factors: order, winning, qualifying, and less important, and divide each category into three further points representing strong, medium, and weak positions. Judging performance against competitors. A competitive performance standard would consist merely of judging whether the achieved performance of an operation is better than, the same, or worse that of its competitors.
Topic 4. How can operations strategy be put together? The process of operations strategy. Process of strategy. Concerned with how strategies are put together. process of operations strategy means the method that is used to determine what an operations strategy should be. It is not a simple task. Putting an operations strategy together and making it happen in practice is a complex and difficult thing to achieve. Although any simple step-by-step model of how to do operations strategy will inevitably be a simplification of a messy reality. A 4-stage model will be used to illustrate some of the elements of process. This stage model is shown in figure 2.7. It divides the process of operations strategy into formulation, implementation, monitoring, and control.
Operations Strategy Formulation. The formulation of operations strategy is the process of clarifying the various objectives and decisions that make up the strategy and the links between. Unlike day-to-day operations management, formulating an operations strategy is likely to be only an occasional activity. Some firms will have a regular, for example annual, planning cycle, and operations strategy consideration may form part of this. But the extent of any changes made in each annual cycle is likely to be limited. The complete process of formulating an entirely new operations strategy will be a relatively infrequent event. There are many formulation processes which are or can be used to formulate operation strategies. Operations Strategy Implementation. Operations strategy implementation is the way that the strategies are operationalized or executed. It means attempting to make sure that intended strategies are actually achieved. It is important because no matter how sophisticated and intellectual and analytical underpinnings of a strategy, it remains only a document until it has been implemented. But the way one implements a strategy will very much depend on the specific nature of the changes implied by that strategy and the organizational and environmental conditions that apply during its implementation. Operations Strategy Monitoring. Monitoring should be capable of providing early indications or a warning bell, as some call it, by diagnosing data and triggering appropriate changes in how the operations strategy is being implemented. Having created a plan for the implementation, each part of it has to be monitored to ensure that planned activities are indeed happening. Any deviation from what should be happening, that is, its planned activities, can then be rectified through some kind of intervention in the operation. Operations Strategy Control. Strategic control involves the evaluation of the results from monitoring the implementation. Activities, plans, and performance are assessed with the intention of collecting future actions if that is required. In some ways, this strategic view of control is similar to how it works operationally, but there are differences. The more uncertain the environment, the more an operation needs to emphasize this form of strategic flexibility and develop its ability to learn from events.